Welcome to Main Street Podcast, an opportunity to talk to Idaho's elected leaders about the issues that matter to you. Welcome to the Idaho Main Street Podcast. We are here live in studio. Yay! It's been a long time since we've had a guest in person because you guys have all been over in sessions. We've been doing it via Zoom.
We've been in Boise since early January.
But you're here.
Nice
you're
to
here
be home. Person. Finally home.
Yes, this is great. I guess this is Representative Marco Erickson, District 33, Representative Seat B there, and that's the heart of Idaho Falls.
Correct.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We tried to snag you a few times during the session, but you had a very full calendar. So
yes, my calendar fills up so fast. I told people they would call and say, "Can I get an appointment?" I'm like, "Well, about 2 weeks, maybe."
You're as bad as my doctor.
It was bad.
Just less qualified to treat the rash on my back.
That's true.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do that. I'd run away from that.
Now, Representative, you said we could ask you anything today, but then you qualified that with saying accept your social security number.
Social security
we're going to throw the hard-hitting questions at you. We'll start with, how was the session?
Session is always fun for me. I enjoy it a lot. And then there's just some stressful times as well. That's going to happen every year, but I enjoy it. I really do. I get along with all the people there more than most, I think.
Yeah. Now, how does it compare to other sessions that you've had in the past?
This one was interesting. It was a little more contentious amongst our own colleagues inside our own caucus. I think there was some early contention got worked out mostly. Some of it carried on, but that was tough to witness and to be a part of. But at least we were able to work that out.
Yeah, especially as the peacemaker that you are.
Yes, very true. I was always trying to do that.
Let's talk about some of the legislation that you were able to work through this session. What are some of the bills that you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of little things. I think I'm always most proud that most of my bills I run get all the members' support, because I don't have to go around and talk to everybody, because I kind of get a feel for the room. I know how they're going to vote on it. So I was blessed to pass most of my bills with full support of the body. So the fentanyl test strip bill was probably the biggest one. They had been trying to do that for a long time. It was the right timing. We had just passed the fentanyl minimum mandatory sentencing bill, and that mine was more of a trailer to say, hey, since we've done that, here's one that will save people's lives in the public, give them ability to test the different products that they purchase, whether it be drugs, or let's say they go over to Mexico or they purchase lower cost prescription drugs. That happens occasionally. So they would still be able to test it. There's been cases in America of simple things like a Botox treatment having fentanyl in it and people dying because of that. So they get a cheaper version, and so you got to test stuff now. This is a tough time in the world, so we've opened that up, and hopefully it'll be used for good.
Oh, for sure. So we talked at length with some of your colleagues about the mandatory minimums and how the goal is to help lower trafficking of fentanyl, act as a deterrent. But we haven't gotten too much into the fentanyl strips. So as you said, this is an opportunity for Idahoans can now have access to these strips. Where would I need to go if I
Surprisingly, you could buy them anywhere. Before, you could get them on Amazon. It was like $10 for a pack of 12 of those test strips, right? So, less than $1 a piece, and it would be worth it for me if I were to, let's say, because the most common thing you would do is most people would buy a cheaper version of a prescription drug. So in America, it might cost you $100, and you might find it in Mexico and you're getting it for $40, right? And so you're going to want to spend that extra $1 and test the product to make sure you're safe and clear from fentanyl, because you just can't know.
Sure.
Or kids, let's say kids, they like to go to parties a lot, and they're interacting with people. They do things that aren't always the smartest, but if they had that option and they had one extra safety mechanism, even adults as well, I would recommend them use that, so we'd push that out there and say, hey, if you want, purchase these test strips, save a life, right?
Yeah, such a small quantity of fentanyl could be so lethal.
It's this amount at the tip of a pencil tip. Crazy
to think about.
Very teeny.
Yeah, and a lot of the overdoses are accidental. They don't realize that it was laced with stuff.
Yeah, most people don't know. And another thing that happens is if they share a pill, let's say they cut it in half, one half was a lethal dose and the other half was not. It's kind of like we joke about being like you're making chocolate chip cookies, right? You throw it in there and it gets mixed up. You don't get the same amount of a chocolate chip in every single cookie and every single bite. Yeah. And that's what fentanyl's like in the different products that are out there. So it's very dangerous. And we don't want to see any more overdose deaths in Idaho.
No, we don't. And now I'm craving chocolate chip cookies. So thanks for that.
At least it's not the brownie we talked about last time.
Now that other legislation you were proud to get signed by the governor.
Well, we did. I worked with Senator Van Orden on the baby box one. That was really great. It was something that's everyone supported because it was a pro-life approach, pro-family approach. People were in tears when we were in committee presenting those. It was just such a happy bill to present for everybody.
Walk us through what that legislation does.
It allows for them to create these boxes, their devices, safe haven boxes. Allows them to place a baby in a box that's it's like connected to the wall of a building, right? So it's a safe and secure spot. The minute you place a baby in that safe location, because you'll be told that that's where you would do it if you were going to place a baby somewhere, then that machine will lock automatically, so no one could come from the outside and take the baby out and steal the baby. It would immediately trigger 911 and allow or the people in the facility, so they would know that a baby has been placed in the box. They would come down and check it out medically, and then walk through the proper processes, keep it in their possession for 30 days before they can adopt it out. But then potentially in that same time, they'd be looking to find adoptive parents.
Yeah. So there are a lot of babies getting dropped off on doorsteps in Idaho?
Well, no. I talked to a few firemen and first responders that had been captains or chiefs at their local fire districts, and they had indicated to me in their career it happened 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
So, and that was just one district.
Yeah.
So across the state, who knows, once a year, twice a year, 5 times a year maybe. But one time is that we get a safe baby and maybe place it with a family who had been waiting for a long time to have a baby. That's a great option for people. So we figured, why not? And what's great is it's, the most local foundations fund that themselves and the groups, so it doesn't cost taxpayers any money. It's just an extra a way of, promoting the adoption for families.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. You had some more bills too that you were happy about.
Well, I always have bills I'm working on. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I pulled over a few Senate bills. Mm-hmm. I did do some stuff with juvenile corrections and dispatchers, making sure that their PERSI benefits were improved, because a few years ago we did a bill and the supervisors got left out of that. So we fixed that, made that the final class that would ever enter into the rule of 80, means they get a little bit earlier retirement. And so we fixed that. I did a update to one of my bills from last year, which was isolation and seclusion bill. It was designed to make it to where schools wouldn't spank kids and whack them up beside the head and then push them into closets and things like that. And we didn't want to tie the teachers' hands and have no discipline. That was never the intent. But some of them took that bill to mean they couldn't do any restraints ever. And so we just clarified the language saying, yeah, you can restrain them. You just have to inform the parents right away, and then let them go, do the process that's proper. And you can still take care of that. You don't have to exit all the other kids from the classroom. And the teachers, I think, were really grateful that we updated that language so it was more clear and they can still engage in discipline. And a lot of the legislators that were kind of against that last year thanked us and said, yeah, and they all supported it this year. So I was really happy I didn't expect that. And I was grateful. And they just came to me and said, thanks for always being willing to hear people and listen to their concerns and work on that.
Yeah.
So even my own bills, I'll take and fix and update if I need to.
Yeah. And your career, your professional career has been spent helping kids. It's youth treatment. It's the counseling and the substance abuse and everything to get these kids back on the right track. And that's been reflected in your political career, because a lot of the priorities you have are, how do we make sure that some of the most vulnerable of our population, these young kiddos, are getting the stuff that they need, right?
Yeah, almost everything you're going to see me do, if I'm carrying it and it's my bill and I've worked on it, it's going to have something to do with making people's lives better and trying to save the government money.
Yeah.
So there's always tweaks in systems, because we create systems, we can change systems, right? And I think sometimes we get stuck in the rut of just how the system was. And I'm a big fan of analyzing that and going, no, we should probably change things up a little bit. And sometimes that's a minor policy change. Sometimes that's a major change to the entire program. And so you have to look at it from all angles and be willing to do the hard stuff and convince your colleagues that sometimes change is necessary. So one of the big things I did this year with that was I like to commission studies occasionally from the Office of Performance Evaluation, OPE. So 4 years ago, in my first year, I did a study I had them do on juvenile justice so that they can give me some outcomes reports and we could take a look at what we can change. Well, this year we had some major problems with some of these group homes that the state is taking custody and they're placing kids in, and they were experiencing abuse, neglect, and sometimes sexual abuse and things where we were just shocked that that could happen under a state watch. Yeah. So I asked for a study a little deeper into that, for a statewide approach so that we could see what's going on and why that's happening and take care of it and fix it with policy so it doesn't happen in the future.
I read an article in the paper that was talking just about that study that's being done, the investigation. When do we expect to see results of it?
Well, they got 2 other ones they're going to put priority on. I think with the schools were top priority because they wanted to do a study to see if a 4-day week versus 5-day week, that was real important. Also, they wanted to look into LUMA, which has been a big disaster. It was a new finance management system the state was using, and most employees across the whole state have had major problems with that. So they're focused on those 2, but then they'll get to ours next. Ours was the top priority picked by the committee. So I was proud of that. I didn't expect that when there were 6 proposals and ours was picked as the top priority one. So that was good.
Yeah. So the session ended last week. Was it Friday?
Mostly, yes, on Friday. They may come back this week, but I'm going to be tied up in other responsibilities.
Yeah. But so session, if they come back, is it just veto override?
I think that's the intent in case. But as far as I know right now, there hasn't been any vetoes as of today.
Yeah, I read that the governor had vetoed a gold and silver bill.
Oh, maybe he did today. I hadn't read that.
I don't suspect a veto override on the bill, though, as I was looking
Most
at it.
likely not.
Yeah. But even with the session being over, you'd think, okay, job's done. You book a flight to Cancun and put your feet up, but you're not.
No.
Why is that?
The minute I'm done with one thing, I've got another thing planned, right? So that was really hard for me to go an extra 2 weeks in session because I was working on writing some grants for our organization, making sure the funding was there. There's a lot of technical writing and also gathering of signatures from people that you work with and collaborate with. So there's a lot involved in those processes. So I spent hundreds of hours working on that in the last few weeks. So as that session, it took away from my ability to do that. And then I had other trips planned. Like I go speak. People ask me to speak because I'm a legislator, also because of my professional background. So and I've had to cancel one of those recently because it was just, I was going from one to another. This week we have the Idaho Drug Prevention Conference, which I've been going to that almost 25 years. But it's in Sun Valley, right? And while I'm there, I figure I have most of my colleagues there who I'm working with on other legislative projects already. So I email them and create an agenda, send them out some ideas and say, hey guys, we're going to meet at this location at this time that Thursday, and we'll be right back into working on things for the next session. So we're preparing ahead of time. Yeah. So when we come together right in just January, we've got this stuff ready to go, and everybody's already talked about it. We're all ready to testify on behalf of what projects we support and why, and we're unified, and there isn't a lot of opposition. So that's the best way to be a legislator, always working on things.
Yeah, that's crazy to think that you're already gearing up for the session that will start January 25.
Yes.
Do you have some things in mind that you're thinking we didn't get this done, but we need to?
Yeah, there's a lot we didn't get done. One of the things, obviously, better quality health care for the women. Women's health is a big issue. And we were trying to move some stuff forward this year, but because there's a federal lawsuit that's going into a Supreme Court case, they didn't want to allow anything to move forward. And I think that's the biggest disappointment of this whole session, because there was some things we needed to do a better job there. So we're working on that ahead of time. We're working on some justice reform. We've been seeing some things really working well with juveniles. And I'm talking to some partners in law enforcement and in the prosecutor's offices, local courts and judicial system, seeing if there's some way we can run a potential pilot project, a couple of them, one of them in the prisons And if we see good results, that we can move those more universal across the state. And they're all designed to help the inmates have maximum outcomes, get back into the community at a maximum capacity in a good way, and then also have just better savings of dollars for the state, less people going into the prisons, right? So all of that together. And there's several of us legislators working on that together from this area in Eastern Idaho. So we do collaborate outside of session. People don't always know that, but we do.
Yeah. Is that the pilot program? Would that be like the Ignite program that they're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Ignite program from the sheriff's office is a big part of that. I just was talking with the sheriff just this morning about that. And I said, hey, I would like you to come present that to our group that's working, because then they're all informed and it's going really well. So yeah, that's definitely one of the programs.
Yeah, because as I've spent time with the sheriff on it and learned more about it, to reduce recidivism is so important. But it's also when you look at the individual and think, man, rather than the revolving door of our incarceration facilities, what if we could bring them out and have them contributing, become taxpayers and get them out and help in society?
We always say there's a balance of justice and mercy.
Sure.
And we want to do our best to have that mercy early on, but we have to have justice too. So when we find that balance, serve those families and keep them out of systems as much as possible, have them right their wrongs and learn and move forward. But the more we enter them into systems, the more they're stuck in there. Yeah. So getting them treatment, and looking at their readiness, working with them where they're at. Right? You can't just force people to go down a new road and a new path, but you can help encourage them. I used to say this old saying we had out on the farms. They'd say you lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I says, well, I could put a salt lick out there and make it really thirsty. And I think it's the same concept with people, that when they see this golden thing out there, a golden carrot that's going to make their life better, and they have the option to choose that, they're likely to go that route with a little bit of positive motivation.
Yeah, because where would any of us be without second chances?
Yeah, exactly. We would all be in a hard time.
We definitely would be. Let's circle back to this women's healthcare issue, because I know you speak with local physicians a lot. For those that are tuning in that are familiar with the pro-life, pro-choice debate, but might not be familiar with what the challenge is in Idaho with women's healthcare, walk us through what we need to fix or what's been going on.
Well, OB docs, we could start there. OB doctors are struggling. They're worried that they're going to get sued all the time, that they might have a legal lawsuit against them. And so it's not incentivizing new people to come around here and say, yeah, I want to do that treatment and help women who are specialized, right? Our family doctors can do so much. They can provide, but they're not specialists in the way that those OB docs are. So we have a gap there, and they're, like they can't do a C-section, for example, when there's complications. And so you have higher risk when you don't have the people to do the work. And I really worry when we go too extreme and we're not able to take care of our physicians that we have, and they're having to worry about getting sued over something that they know is medically necessary. They're not pushing an agenda or trying one way or the other. Their patients have a specific need, and they need to meet that need.
Yeah, we're not talking elective abortions here. We're talking about their doctors who, because of definition and statute, that are now second guessing or struggling to know what the right decision is with the life of a woman because of legal
it's taken them longer to make those decisions, whereas before they just know what to do, but they have to go through now and make sure that they're covering themselves legally. They've got all the paperwork in order, and they're justifying every decision they make. And it's a little tougher on them. It's causing them more administrative time, and they have to worry about each and every one of their staff in that room that's assisting them in their liability. So it's a burden we placed on them unintentional, and we haven't fixed it yet, right? So people are waiting for us to fix it. And in the meantime, there are some spots in the state where we've lost the ability, and more in the rural areas. As you know, people are aging out in those rural communities, and not as many people are moving there. And so it's not always fiscally sound for them and a good business practice so that's a factor. And then also population growth and new babies being born, right? The current generation isn't having as many babies. So when you get to those rural communities, it changes them, and their business models have to adjust with that. So it's been a struggle where we've lost a few physicians that are doing that work.
So the hope is that once the case has worked its way through the Supreme Court, then Idaho will be able to change language in the statutes.
That's what we're told. You know, I had a bill before we went to, a couple of years ago, we had a bill ready to go and we could have done some stuff, but there were some special interest groups that got involved, and chairmen sometimes allow those guys to have too much influence. I feel that we're the lawmakers and we should have just pushed that through. But some of those chairmen like to hear their voices more than, and they couldn't get along, and they were both pro-life groups, right? When you have two pro-life groups and they can't even agree, that's problematic.
Sure.
We're all pro-life. We're trying to help, but yeah, this has been really interesting the last few years. We had some solutions we were trying to push, and we just didn't get them. And again this year, and so I get disappointed because I really want to make a difference. Just small little things like that make a huge impact for our state on women's health care.
Yeah. Let's transition from healthcare to education. You've got Idaho Falls High School right in the middle of your district, and you serve with former school board member of District 91, Senator Dave Lent. And the issues around updating school facilities has been such a hot issue this session. And obviously Idaho Falls High School is one that's pretty outdated and can't seem to pass a bond. What's the short-term solution here as you look at updating school facilities and the work that the governor and Senator Lent have been doing?
Well, I think the fastest thing we can do is just divert a lot of money over to the school facilities across the state. And we need to retire programs that are currently there being funded, that were some of our legislators' pet projects. And sometimes we have to realize that there's other priorities that are more important.
Yeah.
And those facilities and that backlog of maintenance is long overdue. And we need to just sometimes adjust those funding and retire an old program in favor of something. And if it's needed in the future, we could bring something back once we've taken care of business, right? We've just way too long gone without taking care of those facilities. And if you travel and you see some of those facilities like we have, you'll be amazed, and you wouldn't want your child going in there, and you're like shocked that we haven't taken care of that. And it's our duty. So it's time for us to step up. And I was really pleased to see that we were able to have one bill, but we can always do more. And I think to answer your question about short-term solutions, there's other options that have been proposed, like maybe in the future we have designs of buildings that we say, hey, these are 4 or 5 approved buildings for this size for an elementary school and for a middle school and high school, and we just give them the plans, and the legislature can have them be built to a certain amount of money. And I think that would be a great solution. We haven't got there yet, but that would be a great option, because then a school district could say, we need a new elementary. They get on the list for a certain amount of years, and it would just happen.
Sure.
You know, it would be like, however it is, 5 a year, 6 a year, 10 a year. I don't know what that number would look like yet, but or how much they would cost. But I do know you do save costs when you keep the same design and everybody doesn't individualize their design. You can still change the colors. You could change the angle it's pointed at, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I like that. Senator Lent told us you'd be blown away. You wouldn't be. We would be blown away by how much a building costs.
Yeah,
and it's not getting cheaper.
$20 to $40 million on some of those.
Yeah, it's wild. So I imagine when you speak with your constituents, education and school facilities are probably near the top of many of their lists.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. They're concerned about about the percentage that it takes to approve a bond. I hear that a lot. So there was a constitutional amendment proposed in the Education Committee this year. There were several different constitutional amendments, not very many of them. I don't think any of them moved forward, because most of us were like, it's really not a thing you take lightly to change the Constitution. But that was one of them that came up to allow them to vote to lower that threshold. And I think the intent was to move that to a time when there are more people engaged in the process. So like in November.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me. That way you have a real majority. And if it was 50+1, then you'd be okay. So that's an option that's out there as well. And I think a lot of our constituents have been asking for that option. It just didn't move forward past the committee. I think it was introduced by Representative Rod Furness this year.
Yeah, and we know he's a troublemaker, right?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No, we like Rod. Rod comes on a lot. Other issues that your constituents tell you about, aside from education and school facilities and school bonds?
Well, we hear about the transportation infrastructure all the time, potholes. I get calls. Most of my calls are related to mental health, though, seriously, because people know, and they look up my profile and they know, oh, this guy knows something about this. He'll do something, or he'll make a phone call on my behalf. So I get a lot of phone calls specific to that because that's my specialty, right? Yeah. So I'm proud of that they're willing to have me, and I can usually solve their problem rather quickly or connect them with the people that can. And it's nice to feel that they were looking for help and they got it. Right. So that's one thing that I will do with all my constituents always is I give them my cell phone. I'm like, call me if you need something. We're happy to do that.
That's wild. And you don't get too many spammers calling you.
No, have not had that. I've been really blessed. So let's not have any spammers call me now all of a sudden.
So you're in a different seat than a lot of us that in that you get to see, the laws be made. You're right there. Do you feel like Idaho's heading in the right direction?
I always feel Idaho's heading in the right direction. If you look at us compared to the national, I meet with legislators from all over the country. People don't realize I travel a lot to do legislative stuff. Last year, I went to Washington, D.C. 3 times to work on healthcare policy. I was in Colorado, and when I was in Colorado, 13 other state legislators were there and interacting with us. And whenever we travel to each other's states, we connect with each other and we talk. Idaho's doing really well. We're not in major debt like other states. You talk to them and we're like, you are $30 billion in debt. That's more than our entire budget. Like, how can you guys operate? And we do really good work. We have some rifts in our party sometimes, and but nothing that's too hard to work out. Right? We're good at working things out. And that's what I love about Idaho. We're good people. Most of them are always there for the right reasons. We just see things differently.
Well, and there's sometimes a perception that in Boise, the Republicans and the Democrats vote completely opposite. And then sometimes the Republicans and other Republicans vote completely opposite. And we hope that some good stuff comes. But you actually have been doing some research and cracking in on the bills and how they passed. And I was surprised to learn that there was more bipartisanship bills passed this last session than what I think most people would realize.
Yeah, I've been I love statistics. I love analysis because it tells the story. So I looked at just the House bills so far. I haven't added the Senate bills in, but in just the House bills, about 50% of all the bills we passed, which is close to a little over 200 of them that we voted on, and almost 50% were all members of both parties supported them. So that means either 70 members or there might have been a couple absent. But in the case, all the members supported that legislation equally. So that means it was bipartisan and we all supported.
And so what does it tell you about that issue or about that need?
Oh, that's a great question. It's either a really darn good bill or it's a pretty simple fix to something that people really don't care that much. But most of the time, it's kind of a mix. It's a mix of a simple tweak or something we do every year. Like I ran the pharmacy. It's a bill we run every year to classify the scheduling of new pharmaceuticals. It's something we do every year. Most of the times it gets like a few voters are voting against it. And this year I was shocked. I was like, all 70 of you supported that bill? Like, that's great. Like, it's not normal, but we emphasized that Idaho had the Idaho way of doing it. And we didn't just follow the federal way. Sure. And our people didn't just adopt what the feds had said. Idaho had their own council, looked at things their own way. And once in a while, they'll reject a couple of the federal classifications. So that's kind of a simple example. It's a simple bill, but I run that when I need to.
Yeah, but the moral of the story is we would be concerned if every bill had unanimous support from both parties.
Yes, we would.
There would be challenges there, but it's nice to see that there is a number of bills that everyone can agree on.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember when I looked at my analysis, the party line votes, there was roughly in just House vote, almost 35, 36. So it was about 15% of all the bills that were very clear party line. Republicans voted one way, Democrats voted another way. And it was all Republicans. And the way I do my analysis, if there's less than 5 that move in one way or another, I don't count that as a split vote or a straight party vote. But it's very rare. But those ones, it's pretty clear how many 35 of them were very clear party votes like that. And then the rest of them, when there's extras, that means the Republicans were split. So there's occasionally that happens about, 35% of the time that happens.
Yeah. Now, if you had the opportunity to sit down in front of the whole House and Senate and were able to say in this off session, like what they ought to do to become more effective when you're in session, what do you think is the missing component to ensure that you guys can run even smoother when January to March?
You asked the magical question. I've been thinking about this for a long time. One of the greatest things we can do is come prepared to session with bills ready. And the second thing we can do is have our committees have special work groups where the committee works together on legislation to fix actual problems. And then we've come up with these solutions and worked on them rather than outside interests coming, because there were several bills this year where people from outside Idaho were trying to push their agenda.
Yeah.
And you could see right through that. And they'd come testify in committee, and they're not even Idahoans. They're not solutions for Idaho. So I think that's what's missing. There isn't enough committee collaboration. Even if we're split in how we're made up, but if we did that, we would come to a consensus together, and then that legislation would fly right through, and it would solve really amazing problems. So I'd love to see more of that happening in committee.
Yeah, so coming day one with a lot of preparation and pre-work done in collaboration with committee to ensure that when you're there, you're not starting from scratch.
Correct.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
Because what happens is they come in, and the first week, not a lot of things happen. It's slow.
Yeah.
And I wish that we just had bills ready to roll right out of the gate, and you already had a bill number. And that first week, you're having hearings on those bills, and most of us had already heard about it. We've talked about it, so we're ready to go. And I think that would speed things up, and especially with the budgets. I mean, our constitutional mandate is get those budgets done. And they tried a new process this year, and we saw how it went. I mean, you could say it was good or bad. It was a little bit divided on how we liked that or not.
Definitely. Now, you're busy. You've got everything going on, but you still decided you're a glutton for punishment and you're going to run again. You're up for re-election.
Yeah, I still have work to do. I've learned a lot of things. I still have some more work to do, and that's going to benefit Idahoans, especially in the mental health space and the justice space, as we talked about earlier. And when I'm done feeling, it should be a couple more years, maybe one term after that. And I'm pretty sure I can achieve a lot of those things I set out to do. And then it'll be someone else's turn. So even with all the stress and all that, I'm willing to do the service that needs to be done for our constituents, and I'm happy to do that.
Well, I think you bring a unique set of skills and an experience to the job that not every legislator does. So your voice is important. We know how busy you are. We know you've got to run off, but we really do appreciate you coming and meeting with us today.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
today.
Again, this is Representative Marco Erickson, District 33. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.